region called Catalonia. We are in the region of Penedès. Later on, if you want, we can actually talk about Corpinat. I don't know if you know what's that word of Corpinat, but if you want to talk about that new legislation of sparkling wine in Spain, so we can actually share some opinions or whatever the ideas that you have in mind. So, and we actually, I'm living, and the winery is from Sant Sadurní d'Anoia. So Sant Sadurní d'Anoia is what actually you're seeing in the map. It's about 13 minutes from Barcelona, so really close to Barcelona. And that's Penedès is like a valley close to that big city that's actually well known around the world. It's Barcelona. So we actually started being wine growers in the 1881. So I will complain a bit about you Americans about one big thing that you take us to Europe. It's the phylloxera. I don't know if you know about phylloxera, but at the beginning for us was pretty helpful, just because my great-grandfather was Josep Batlle. This guy was started actually doing sparkling wine, base wine, and being wine grower just because we started selling wine in France. Just because in that period, in the 1881, the phylloxera was kicking hard in France. So Spain was a good opportunity actually to grow some vineyards and make some wine. So we actually, Gramona, started selling base wine to the Champagne area. So that's why actually we started doing some wine. So that's Josep Batlle. That's the first generation. And yeah, we started actually just producing wine and just being wine growers at the beginning. And it wasn't 1921 that actually we just started doing the first sparkling wine in the Penedès. Actually, it's the same house that I'm actually living. So the first bottle is just made under my feet. So it's pretty nice. That's these two guys. Actually, they're the fifth generation. So I don't know if you know them, but the one on the right is my father. So it's Jaume Gramona, and the one on the left is my uncle. So it's Xavier Gramona, and they're actually both. They are actually the bosses of Gramona. The one on the right is still my boss. Sooner or later, I will just replace them, but for the moment they are actually ruling the company. The sixth generation working nowadays in Gramona, it's Leo Gramona is the son of Xavier and me here in the picture with the big bear as I am actually. So I didn't shave it anything for this confinement, so I'm still looking the same. And the most important generation for me, it's the seventh generation. That's my dog. My dog is called Bacchus, so he's my son, and he will take care about the winery in the future. So he's the most important part of Gramona, I think, for the moment. So just joking a bit, but yeah, he's helping me doing some ripening controls during harvest, and just walking around the vineyards with him is pretty amazing. So I don't know if you know anything about terroir things, biodynamic things, but I always want to speak more about vineyard than cellar. You will see, for like I'm winemaker and I studied just winemaking in Tarragona, close to Barcelona, but the focus actually we're actually focusing on in Gramona is about the vineyard. And that management of the soil is pretty important, no? So this is my father, and he's grabbing two big friends of us. So these two guys actually that he's grabbing, they're helping us to keep soil to our vines, and the life under our vines are actually the most important thing nowadays in Gramona, and we actually taking care about that. So why we are pretty focused on just regarding the life under soils and the part of the terroir. No, so Gramona was starting to be organic in the 2005, but we just make a big change of biodynamics. Now later on we will speak about a bit of biodynamics, but on 2007 my father meets these two guys. I don't know if you know or you see them, but these two guys are actually under the soil. These two guys are called Claude and Lydia Bourguignon. These two guys actually, they're from France. They're from Burgundy, and these are the two best soil analysts of the world, for my opinion. And just knowing about these two guys, just they actually came to Gramona, and they started actually to analyze our soils. And the conclusion of 2007 was that they were saying us that our soils were almost dead. So the first time that actually they told us that was pretty traumatic. But we actually focus on trying to solve that. As you know, Spain is a hot climate country. It's not like France in different parts, but anyway, the contents of organic materia in our soils and the life under our soils in general in Penedès or wine region were pretty low. So thanks these two guys, actually, we actually wanted to start working with biodynamics, just because these two guys actually tell us, okay, we are not really biodynamic. We don't live life. We don't have a life like a biodynamic person, but we just made some analysis, and we have seen that the best way to have good terroir in our soils is just working with biodynamics. So thanks these two guys, we actually focusing on biodynamics. Actually, we will talk about that soon. So this actually this double base or soils, as I said, they're actually basically clay and calcareous. So in Penedès we don't have a really big variation of soils, just basically clay. And this tête de poupée, we call it in French, we call it calcium agglomerates that actually is produced by bacteria. So the small amount of life that they found, we just find that tête de poupée that they actually is created by bacteria. And this formation actually allow us to give some freshness and some humidity to our soils. As I tell you, so we are actually struggling about we don't have a lot of rain. We have a pretty dry climate. So the thing is, having this actually help us a lot, and so giving life to our soils actually just potentiate this calcium agglomerates in our soils. And we find a really big friend that actually they just find it here in Penedès, and we call it Nina, and that's a family of collectors. Is a nematode, so we just find it working in our soils, and actually we just dedicated a T-shirt 4 years ago, just because actually just find it here in our vineyards. So in terms of pruning and grafting, we just have been working a lot with that pruning work. So I don't know if you know that new fashion about that respectful pruning in the vineyard. But there's some hipsters called Simulate Search working as pruning consultants in the States and in Europe in all the wine regions, and they actually teach us how to actually prune and how to do a respectful prune. So they actually called Simulate Search. If you actually want to see some information about this method of pruning, it's amazing. So we just find a problem here in the whole region in Europe, especially in Italy, Spain, and France, that we actually have been working with a not really well way to prune our vines for the last 50 years, sorry. And this method actually just gives some information to change that mentality that we have been doing for these 50 years. So I don't know if you know the training system in the vineyard. It's called gobelet or bush vine. Okay, so that's historically has been the training system in the whole Spain, the most extended training system, and for me, it's the best system that actually we can actually work with. But these last 50 years, we just replanted everything and just planted with cordon royat, so that that system, and it's actually this is the most used system around the world. But the thing is that we just forgot how to actually prune or well prune, and these guys actually just give some information how to prune well. So there's some like the basic thing about the new respectful way to prune is to talk about reducing the amount of cuts that actually we're doing to our plants. So see if you're reducing the amount of cuts that you're doing to the plants and just orienting that cuts, you can actually respect the vascular flow of the plant and just have more old vineyards, just because nowadays all the vineyards in Penedès, all different regions in Spain, that plants are dying at 25, 30 years old. But actually we're focused to replant and prune again to actually get that 50 years old or 60 years old pines or 100 years old that you can actually find in different regions in Spain, as Priorat or Ribera del Duero or Rioja or whatever. No? So that's actually one of the best focus that we're doing in Gramona. So that's a gobelet. Okay. So later on we will speak about the Xarel·lo Macabeu grapes. If you're drinking a cuvée, you're drinking a sparkling wine made with Xarel·lo and Macabeu grapes. If you're drinking Imperial, you're drinking a wine made with Xarel·lo, Macabeu, Parellada, and Chardonnay grapes. So let's say Xarel·lo, Macabeu are the most autochthon grapes in Penedès, and they are the base of all the sparkling wine that actually we're doing. And later on, we will focus on Xarel·lo because Xarel·lo is for me is the best grape that actually we can actually work with. But we actually training all the Xarel·lo Macabeu with that gobelet formation, as you have actually seen it. And then the Chardonnay, we have some Chardonnay and some Pinot, and we train that Chardonnay and Pinot in Guyot. But that Guyot is called Guyot Poussard. If you want to get some more information, just go and look for Guyot Poussard. This system actually is the one Guyot that respects that vascular flow at the best way that actually you can do it. And that Italian guys actually just are really focused on this way to training it. So Chardonnay and Pinot are two way to prune. They need to be pruned as a Guyot. Guyot is a large way of pruning, just because the yield and the way of cultivating them is different here in Spain. But we actually want to make it pretty similar to the way that they're pruning it in Burgundy or in Champagne. And another really, that's for example one of the vineyards in Chardonnay of Chardonnay in Guyot Poussard. This vineyard actually we call it the Bourguignon vineyard, just because we just call it Bourguignon just because of these two guys that we were talking about, the two soil analysis and that just they came at Gramona just teach us how to make a good biodynamic farming for saving all soils. And that's, for example, a vineyard of Xarel·lo. This is Xarel·lo. This is so we're training all the vineyards in Xarel·lo for gobelet, as you see in the vineyard. So each plant has one stack, one wood part, and we just we are actually fermenting in gobelet, in bush wine. So just thinking about the care about the pruning, we just created a school. So France has 3 schools of pruning. Italy has 1 school of pruning, that is that Italians I was talking about, and Spain, that is actually the first country of that has more surface in terms of vineyard in the wall has not any school of pruning. So we just created the first pruning school in Spain, and actually I'm the director of this school, and it's called Academia de Poda. And it's one of the parts that Gramona is working with, is just not teaching at Gramona, just teaching in other wineries in other regions in Spain. And here is one of the classes of the pruning school. But here, actually, if you see, we are not teaching about pruning, we're teaching about grafting. So grafting is a really important thing too in our vineyards. We actually grafting all the vineyards that we are planting, and this is one of the classes of the school. So here in this picture, you can see some wine growers from Recaredo, wine growers from País Baltà, wine growers from Torres. So there's some different wine growers from the region that we actually teaching them for pruning, and that's obviously Bacchus helping me how actually to prune. But the terms of grafting, we just actually grafting our own vineyard, just because it's not about everything is about the pruning. If you want to get a vineyard that actually holds more than 50 years old, to get that 100 years old, we need to control or put in material to our vines. So we have to select all the wood that we're going to graft or we're going to plant. And if you do it by yourself, the result is way better. So here in France and Spain is really known to hire Mexican guys. So the Mexican guys are the best ones to actually graft. They're really good grafting. So during April and May, they just came these teams of Mexicans to graft in the different regions in Europe, just because they're actually doing pretty good. And these two different styles of grafting is the ones actually we are playing in Gramona. So the one of the left is called the cheap one, and the one of the right is the teapot one. So we actually just applying this way of grafting just because it's the best way actually to reach that long aging vines, to reach that sustainable way of pruning and grafting. This is one of the vineyards that actually we will graft it with Macabeu. So the mountains of on the final actually is it's Montserrat, and we just grafted this vineyard two weeks ago. So as you see, these vines there in the middle, that's the American rootstock, and we just grafted 2 weeks ago, just putting out all this wood and just grafting with the Charello and Macabeu vines. This is another vineyard actually we just grafted 3 weeks ago. The other one we just grafted with Macabeu. This one we just grafted with Charello. And Charello, we will train it at this way just because Charello used to actually grow in is the way that actually grows is it really under the earth. So we just have to hold it with these sticks. And actually, this could be perfectly that maybe Chateauneuf du Pape, but no, is Penedès. And that's another vineyard actually we just grafted last year. So yeah, all the vines are actually we're planting with Gobelet, and we're just grafting everything by our own, just because it's the way to make for me more sustainable all the vineyards and just make it more healthier and with high quality way of planting it. And of course, Bacchus taking care of the way of grafting it. That's another vineyard of Macau. We call it Coquette, and he's always there, just checking everything's good. So just taking a step about the pruning way of managing our vineyards. we work with grass cover. As I told you, we are not a really humid country, so we cannot work with really big grass covers and really fixed grass covers. But actually, we have been working with grass covers since 2012, and we actually working with spontaneous grass covers or controlled ones. How we control these two grass covers? So we have different animals that actually help us to actually control it. So the chickens actually doesn't really control it so well. But then we have some sheep. We have 6 sheep um, uh, from the south part of Spain. So if you get some cheese from the Manchega sheep, so it's one of the part of that we actually have it. And then the Ripollesa one, the Ripollesa, it's from the north part of Catalonia. So the way of managing this grass cover is one of part of it is just using that part of the animals in the whole concept of the farm that we actually managing, and then which with managing with horse plowing that now we're going to speak about. So horse plowing, in total, in Gramona we have about 50 hectares of vineyards, and we just nowadays we have 4 horses, and we just decided to plow almost the half of the vineyards of Gramona by horse. So we have 4 horses, and we have 4 right horses, so 4 caballeros we call it here. 3 guys and one girl. The best one is a girl for sure. And actually we were managing all this part of the vineyard, just because of course it's more expensive. Of course is maybe not the easiest ways to do it, but that connection about if we speak about biodynamics, we have to incorporate that animal part inside our farm. And the horse for me is the best connection that you can actually feel it while you're working your vineyards. And yeah, that's Altair, de Vin, Corsoir, and then Chic. They're the 4 horses actually we have in Gramona, and we just focusing on plowing everything in our vineyards. So we are actually I show you already the sheep. I show you already the chickens. I show you the horses. But we have cows. These cows are really important. These cows actually they came from the north part of Catalonia too, and they're actually specialized danger of competition, just because as we generally do the humans, with if doesn't have if a cow is not producing a lot of milk and is not producing a lot of meat, we just kill them. But these guys actually these cows are the best ones for cleaning woods, for cleaning forests, and we just take 12 of them to rebuild this population and just help that cows to repopulate and to avoid to be extinct. And then we use the most important part of these cows is actually the shit. That should help us to actually make that different biodynamic preparations that now I'm going to talk about. But that's the best partnership that we have at Gramona. It's pretty organic. Let's say that that way to do it. Yeah, more about the horses. Why we actually plowing by horse, just to integrate that part of the animals inside our farm. But the same way we have been working our soils with big trucks for 30-40 years, and we actually we just have been compacting it for a long time. And with horses actually the weight of a horse, as you know, is much less than as a track. So we just focusing on not compacting that soil too much. We are actually trying to drain way better or what actually we're getting in. And for sure, the most important thing is to make easier to our roots from our vineyards to get it deeper and easier to get all the nutrients that actually are that important for us to make it easier for them. That's one of the most important things for me. And then the biodynamics. I don't know if you know a lot about biodynamics. I think most of you know about organic farming. Let's say that biodynamic farming it's going I think a step forward that or organic farming it's just more you cannot add that much copper or that much sulfur in your vineyards, and of course you have to work with different biodynamic preparations and some medicinal plants while you're actually working with biodynamics. It makes it harder to actually grow with biodynamics, but we actually in Spain we don't have that much problems with mildew or powdery mildew, so we can actually work with biodynamics easily, and we can actually apply that biodynamic with not be really struggling. So it's good. So we started in 2010. And yeah, this one of the parts of the farm that actually we just built it this last year. And yeah, I don't know if I will explain slightly pretty quickly what's our different parts or different preparations of the different preparations. That question is yes, we do all our preparations by ourselves. That's why we have that house, we have a garden with all that medicinal plants, and we get all that silicium for all the different preparations. No? So Mariatun is for me it's the most basic preparation in biodynamic. It's made with different medicinal parts and compost that goes from that 500 and 507, that different preparations, and then it's made basically with that manure of our cows, and it's made with that just dig it in half a barrel, dig it in the soil, and just resting it is as six months minimum. And this is the preparation that actually give us more life to our soil. So if you want to make extra push for revitalizing a vineyard or just before planting, you have to apply Mariatun one time or 2 times per year. So that's kind of the boost that we have for just revitalizing our soils. Later on, we have that preparation 500. So I don't know if you have seen that preparation with the horn and digging that manure in a horn and then dig it in the soil. So we use that manure from our cows to do that preparation. Later we have that preparation 501. The preparation 501, it's made with silice. Silice it's quartz. So that preparation is not made with manure, but we use that quartz that actually help us to avoid that diseases with fungus as mildew, powdery mildew. And then we use that different medicinal plants for making some decoctions or infusions of that medicinal plants. This is the list in English. I know it in Spanish. So as I was saying, 500 is with compost and horns. 501 is with silicates. Then 502 is yarrows. 503 is chamomilla. Sitting nettles 504, oak bark, dandelion and 500 seeds, and valeriana. So these are actually all the different preparations that we're doing by ourselves in Gramona. And yeah, the work with medicinal plants we just started 2 years ago, but with the biodynamic preparations we have started since 2010. So we still have to learn a lot about medicinal plants in our vineyards. And then the compost. The compost, obviously, having only 12 cows, we cannot get all the compost that we need for our vineyards. Working with biodynamic, you cannot actually apply anything from in terms of chemic part of a vineyard, so you cannot complement that nutrient that the plants need instead of just adding compost. So that compost is really important. So as you see, that's the recipe of our compost, more or less. But obviously the bovine part of the compost is the most important part. I get the bladders are the horns, maybe. I guess yes. Yeah, we just get the horns from different farms, from the not from everything, all our cows, because we just have 12 cows, but we just get that horns from different growers, biodynamic growers of cows that we have in Gramona. So just not having it more kind of sustainable way to do it. Bufeta, okay. So the bufeta, we're trying to adapt that biodynamic concept of just for that preparation we need that bufeta for buy it to friends, but we actually trying to convert that preparation using a bufeta from a animal here that is called cabirol. So just because biodynamic is really strict with the different preparations made originally in France or Germany, but we actually trying to adapt it from here, from Spain, and the different species that we actually have it in Spain. So that's why we actually trying to adapt it in the way to doing it. So we are not, at the beginning we were buying it in France, but actually we just trying it. No, cabirol is actually cabirol is a kind of let's say a deer, maybe deer. Let's say deer. Bambi. Well, I just say Bambi and that's it.
Yeah, it's a deer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's a part of the concept. So I will not and that's how we actually make it the compost. So it's not just a part of the manure that we get it from different farms close to Girona. That actually they're organic farms that we just guided that manure. So when you're actually doing the compost, you have to remove it a few times a year, and you have to look out if you want to regard it for 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months, and then you have to apply the valeriana preparation, and then the different compost balls of the different preparations that we have. So the compost is actually one of the biggest works that we have in the vineyard. I will not just make reference about the certification because I don't really just care a lot about the certifications, but the thing is that we're certified or biodynamic. My father, he's always really focused on saying, okay, I always want to be certified in everything. I just think that if you trust in someone and something, and you just want to make it, you don't have to be certified just because you're thinking that way, and you don't need anyone to just certify it. But he's always focusing on that. So we have that 50 hectares, 10 hectares they're still on ecological and conversion. But the thing is, Gramona, we just not have we just not make wine from our hectares. We just buy grapes from other growers. So these growers actually are called Aliances per la Terra. So that's a partnership from the earth. So let's call it that it's an association that just make that helps these different growers that we actually buy the grapes to be certified on biodynamic and to apply all the different preparations for being biodynamics and being certified. So that's actually one of the biggest projects of biodynamics in Spain. I think it's the biggest one in Spain, just because these are actually the different growers that we're working with. So we just buy grapes from them, and they're actually certified. But nowadays we have about 300 hectares certified in biodynamic. So that's one of the biggest amount of hectares certified in Spain for sure. So we just in Gramona we just focused on train them and help them to actually make that conversion. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty big. But we not use all that 300 hectares, but yeah, that's I think we have to, or we just start to change the mind of the traditional way of growing in Penedès. A lot of people they're actually still doing conventional way of farming. We actually started more than in the first century, second century. We started on organic, but biodynamic. I think we starting doing it well, and I think we have to help them to actually to work with biodynamic and actually to help them to make their wines and to sell them wines to help them to actually barrelize better that grapes that actually they're not really well paid. So see, one of the projects actually we have to have them to make some wine from themselves and sell it in a good. So the biggest change, let's say, I think it's still soon because we just have been working in biodynamics for 10 years. But yeah, we actually started seeing a lot of life in our vineyards, like rabbits, bees. Now we're going to start doing some honey and some cheese too. But the thing is, while actually you're working in the vineyards, you're just seeing a big change in terms of life and different species that actually they're coming again. Some of them they're not helpful, which is big because they sometimes they eat the shoots of the grapes. But anyway, that's a good scene, some of it. So we just have seen this. And in terms of the wine, for sparkling wines, it's I think it's still soon. But we've seen higher content of nitrogen in our wines and less reductive wines. And then in terms of yields or of production, we actually have more regular yields on our vines. So that's maybe the biggest changes that we have seen for these 10 years. But I think it's still soon to actually to see that results. I think we have to wait still a few years to actually to observe all that. And yeah, so this is the Penedès. Okay, this is like small points that they're in the images. They're the different vineyards that actually we buy from wine growers. And yeah, so Penedès basically this central part is a valley. So is a valley between two big mountains. And these different points are actually these different wine growers that are certified on biodynamic. And then the winery. So I will speak quickly about how we making wine, but then I will let you just ask the questions that you need. But yeah, we just built a new winery in 2001, just because we were doing the wine in the center of the village. So San Sadurní is pretty small, and just having all the trucks inside San Sadurní was pretty tough. But we just moved about half a kilometer about the central historic winery from Gramona, and we just actually we're working with biodynamic, but we just built the bioclimatic winery, and we are actually focusing on saving energy in all the different parts of the winery. So saving energy with solar panels, saving about 50% of energy since last year. Geothermic energy too, for avoiding to cool down or heating some tanks during harvest. Then a sewage draining plant for all the water actually we're wasting, and then a recovery water footprint that actually we're using for sometimes for irrigating or for recuperating all the water that actually we're using. And that's more or less in terms of savings of thermal energy. It's 41% and 50% of production of energy. So it's not just about biodynamics. It's just about to just close that circle. That for me, it's important to be consequent in the vineyard and be consequent later on the cellar. And then harvest. So the biggest, I think, thing that we are doing differently as the different wineries in Penedès is that we handpick everything. So we pick everything by hand, and we just pick it with 25 kilo boxes. I don't know if you know about Champagne, but Champagne, by law, all the cellars have to be, all the grapes have to be handpicked with 50 kilo cases, and with a really specific way of pressurage that they have. So we just discovered that for doing sparkling wine and long aging sparkling wines, the best way to actually do sparkling wine is making with whole cluster pressing. So we actually working with 2 presses from Champagne area. They are the most known Champagne presses. It's called Cocard press, Cocard. And that whole cluster pressing actually help us to maintain and preserve higher acidity levels in some fractions of the wines of the juices, and lower pH wines too. So if you have in general, if you have a high acidity level wine and low pH level wine, you will have it easier to make long aging sparkling wines and having that potential for doing long aging. So you're drinking Imperial 2013, and if you're tasting it, it's not oxidated at all. La Cuvée 2015, Tres Lustres 2007, we're actually focusing on long aging just because of the way actually we're working with, and then the grapes that we are using. And then if you're actually working with whole cluster pressing, you are not generating juices like really dirty juices, so you're doing more clean. It's a better way to work on the cellar, just because you're getting most clean, the best way to get clean juices. And that's the meaning of using less sulfur contents. So if you have not that dirty wine, you can add less sulfur in your wines, and then do not use any enzymes for clarifying the wines. So that's one of the parts that of making whole cluster pressing help us actually to do that biodynamic part of it. So yeah, now we can actually speak a bit about Cava and Corpinat things if you want. But the thing is, we just kit. For sure, you know Cava. What's Cava? What's Cava? But we just kit the appellation of Cava about a year ago, almost 2 years. Just because Cava is a way of doing sparkling wine with the traditional method way of doing it, but the Cava doesn't really care about where it comes from the vineyard. So you can actually buy some wine and do a second fermentation. Doesn't really care of the region. Doesn't really care about the aging. Doesn't really care about the local grapes that are using. So we just moved from Cava to Corpinat. Okay, so Corpinat is a kind of a new brand, collective brand that you're actually working with different growers. I don't know if you know Racaredo, Llopart, Torelló, Nadal. They're historic sparkling wine producers. Actually, with this is actually a map of Cava, and as you see, that's a map of Spain. So you can actually do Cava in almost all the parts of Spain. So that's the concept of the Dio. It's pretty funny. So we have closer range, the Capellette of Champagne, than Badajoz. So you can actually imagine that's a kind of a stupid way of legislation of Cava, just because you can actually make sparkling wine in all the parts of Spain. But we actually want to create something with the principal region of Penedès. That just because Penedès is the most important region, and the region actually has made more sparkling wine as a cava historically. That actually is in Corpinat, no? So Corpinat, we just delimited the part of Penedès for doing sparkling wine, and in Corpinat, it's necessary to actually be certified organic. In Corpinat, it's necessary actually to handpick everything. In Corpinat, it's actually necessary to do aging, second fermentation aging for 18 months. In cava, it's only 9 months. So we just actually focusing on working in local grapes too. So you actually have to use 90% local grapes for Corpinat, and then don't just working with all these standards of quality that make us more quality kind of sparkling wines that we want to actually express and work with. So, and later, let me speak a bit about Xarel·lo. So that's the basic grape that we actually working with in Gramona. So Xarel·lo is the best grape for me, just because I don't know if you know what's resveratrol, but resveratrol is a polyphenol that actually is really antioxidant. So probably you will see you have been seeing some pills that has had some high content of resveratrol, just because it's an antioxidant polyphenol. And it's actually Xarel·lo is the grape that has highest content of resveratrol in all the white grapes in the world. So usually red grapes has more content of resveratrol, but Xarel·lo even has more resveratrol than Pinot Noir. So that's amazing. And actually Xarel·lo has a really good acidity level and low pH. As I told you, if you have a good pH and a low pH and good acidity, you will make longer, or will be easier to make longer sparkling wines. And at the end is the best, actually for me, is the best wine for a best grape for doing long aging sparkling wines. So that's why in all the blends that we actually have for sparkling wines, we have that 50, 60 or 70% of Xarel·lo in all our blends, just because it's amazing and is the most well adapted grape in the region, just because you have not to add any sulfur or copper in during actually you're growing it. So that's, for me, is the best grape that we have for sure. So yeah, that's more or less what actually doing in Gramona. So I will not be more pesado, we call it here in Spain. And yeah, if you have any question, just go for it, and I will try to solve it.
I just want to say something, I think maybe a little more generally about the Penedès and about sort of the historical center of the Cava zone, and people who haven't been there and don't understand like what. I mean, there's plenty of really thoughtful farmers in the Penedès. I don't want to throw it under the bus. There's a lot of people there whose work I really respect. But Gramona is like one of the larger, not like really, really big, but one of the older, more storied houses. To like take that kind of farming seriously is a really big deal. A lot of the farming for Cava in particular, not even just for wine in the Penedès, is very much like Martian soil, like nothing alive, just like bare, super chemically treated soils and a lot of like pretty ugly stuff. And then just machine harvesting, beat up fruit, and it's that kind of stuff for like a big sparkling wine producer, or like a sort of big in terms of the like historical importance of the project is a really big deal, because it makes other farmers in the region think, oh, well, okay, well, if Gramona thinks that's the right thing to do, then like that's maybe an important thing to do. And I think that's a really important dynamic that you don't see that many producers in the Penedès making sparkling wine, taking farming as like the primary, most serious part of what they do. Mostly they're just buying grapes from farmers as cheaply as they can and making wine as quickly and cheaply as possible. There's other people along with Gramona who are doing that, that are also kind of important and like storied houses, but Gramona really is like a pretty important cutting edge of sort of that transition in the Penedès towards like thoughtful, serious farming.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah.
Sorry, I would like to explain really quick about the second fermentation, because when we do sparkling wine, in general, all the producers, the majority of people is using for the second fermentation crown caps, like a beer, like a Coke. No, that's the most common way, because helps you to make easier the process of disgorgement, because you can disgorge automatically. But we see at Gramona that because we do such a long aging, we like better the way the wines age under cork. So we make a total of 12 sparkling wines, and 7 of them are aged under cork, not on the crown cap. For example, Tres Lustros, the one with the black label that Rob was drinking, that one is aged under cork. Very well. So aging under cork means that we cannot use gyro palettes to remove the yeast, and we have to disgorge every bottle by hand. So we're still very artisans in that sense, that we disgorge by hand a lot of, like 7 different of our wines, and that's something unique as well. Also, for example, Imperial, this one is a brut, so it has a dosage. Same thing in Cuvée. Cuvée is a brut. And the dosage we use at Gramona is very special because it's a solera.
Yep.
So through all these years of history of Gramona, we've kept actually 7 soleras, 7 groups of barrels. That is wine made with Xarel·lo, it's got white Grenache, Macabeo, and there are many different barrels. Those wines are fortified. They've been sitting in the wineries from the beginning. We've been refreshing them over the years. So they have like the history of the winery, and that's the dosage we use at the end. We never sold those wines, but this year, Roc and Leo decided to share a little bit of that. So we're planning to release a few bottles of the Solera itself alone to the market. Hopefully we can bring some of that to the US when all this crazy situation finishes. But that's going to be something very cool to share.
When did you begin the Solera?
Rob, what is the oldest barrel that you know?
So I just all the confinement that I spent it for this actually almost 2 months. I was just renewing and just making blends for the rancio. So just kind of help me to have some time for taking care of the Solera system. And the oldest one actually came from 1910. So it's pretty old.
Whoa.
Yeah. So actually, that was my great grandfather. Actually, he started the Gramona family. Part of the family, historical family, has had some tabernas, some bars, kind of bars in Barcelona in the beginning of the century, and we actually selling it and we were producing some rancio. But since we just started to do the second fermentation sparkling wines, we just take this part of the rancio, and then we just started to build up that rancio Solera kind of project. So that's, for me, that's one of the I'm feeling like pretty amazed of what actually have at Gramona for this. And for the moment we're using it for dosage, but now I want to use it for selling it from itself. So yeah, that's it.
2 things really quick to answer the question about dosage practices. I mean, most cava producers, it's gyro palette, riddling, and then dosage with just sweetened dosage wine with extra sugar. That's by far the most common practice. To do anything besides that is pretty rare. There's definitely a few people who do interesting dosage things, but unless you're drinking really pretty artisanal stuff, it's pretty rare that it's not basically just sweetened. Standard dosage. And then Roc, do you want to just take a second and explain what rancio is and kind of the Penedès rancio tradition, which I think is unless you've hung out in Penedès enough to like see everyone's glass jars on their roofs of their wineries, I think you don't actually get to drink Rancio very often.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's say Rancio, it's a concept pretty similar to that Oloroso from sherry. I don't know if you are used to drink sherry, but the Oloroso actually it's a wine that it's fortified, and it's fortified until 17 degrees more or less. But the thing of the Rancio, especially from Penedès, is that we just pick Tacharello, Macabeo grapes, especially Charello, because you can actually get that high content of alcohol easily. And then we just fortify it, and then we just put it in the roof with that Damajuanas.
Like glass demijohns.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the there's two concepts. So if you're rich, you're doing here in Penedès we say that if you're rich you do Rancio with Damajohns, just because you are actually oxidating quickly your wine, but you're losing a lot of like a big part of the wine. So the rich people actually is doing were doing Rancio in the roofs. The poor people were doing Rancio with barrels under the soil, just because the humidity is higher, so you're not losing much wine just because evaporation, but the oxidation is lower. So this is I don't know if you didn't know it, but that's one of the funniest things that actually my grandfather just told me. That's I started doing it as a poor guy because I couldn't handle that much evaporation on the roof. But actually, I'm doing kind of the rich part because I'm doing some experiments with the Damajon. So yeah, it's amazing, and now everyone is getting crazy about putting that Damajons on the roof and doing something with Rancio. So as Parera, for example, as you know them, or everyone is doing some Rancio, so some oxidation wines in Penedès. So it's nice.
So I have another question about your biodynamic experience. Like you're talking about using indigenous animals to source bladders, like native animals. Are there other changes that you're noticing in the way you work biodynamics with your vineyard that's specific to your site? Like a lot of people might follow it very rigidly, but it makes sense to have it be related to your site and to your land and what is native there. So is there anything else that you're having to find little shifts to make it work better for the system that's for your land, as opposed to just biodynamics?
Yeah, no, the thing is, as you said, biodynamic was more or less created with Steiner on the first conference that he had made, and they weren't really specific. So, but obviously the Meter legislation is focused on animals that actually came from Germany, especially, or France. But I find it pretty stupid. And the second thing is, obviously, if you're doing biodynamics, I find it really stupid to actually buy all the preparations as you can do. So if you don't do it by yourself, it doesn't make any sense. So one of the things of just trying to convert or just make a conversion, for example, is we have some quartz or some quartz for the preparation 501 in our vineyards, but it's not 100% quartz, so it's not the most pure stone that you can find for 501, but we use it anyway, even if it's concentrated as 50%, just because we find it more important to actually get it from our vineyards than not just buy that quartz from different regions and just concentrate it 100% and then just put it, so we just try to actually find it from our vineyards, and then we just kind of creating kind of new preparations to avoiding fungus disease for food diseases from our vineyards with clay and honey, for example, propolis. From propolis, part of the honey of the bees, to actually protect all that cuts that we're actually doing to our vines. This is one of the preparations that we are kind of creating or doing it by ourselves. But yeah, I think we still have to learn a lot and try to make that conversion to penitence, no? Just because we just started in 2010, and we have to learn a lot more about biodynamics, and it's biodynamics, at least it talks about it needs to be working every day in the vineyard and see if what you're doing it's okay, or you have to improve it, and that's the continually you're actually learning. So for sure we will apply something else more than these two things that I just told you. But yeah, it's a hard work, but it's not. I will never say that okay, we're done. We cannot learn anything more from biodynamics. It's impossible. You're always learning to actually you can actually improve all the time. So yeah.
We also started working this year with animals to control other animals. For example, this year we started working with falcons. Because in the summer, when the grapes are ready and juicy and full of sugar, we get these little black birds, estorninos, that they come for it, no? So in the past, we were working with noises, like a noise of a predator or little explosions, but these birds are very smart. So this year, we found this guy in the Pyrenees that has has a falcon nursery. So we said, hey, maybe we can use some of these falcons. So we borrow some baby falcons. How many did we get, Rock? How many falcons?
We started with 10, and at the end of the harvest we just finished with 4.
Yeah, it was sorry, that's what happens, no? But we got the baby falcons before they could even fly. So we would put them on top of we built like a little hut on top of a tree, and we would be feeding them every day. They couldn't see us because they need to think they're growing wild, no? And then the moment they start practicing flying, the day they catch the first bird, all the rest of the birds are gone. The problem is that the day they taste blood, they don't want to go back to the nest. They want to do their own nest. And that's when we lost a little.
That's why they just escaped from Gramona. So just four of them just stay at home, just because they didn't start to hunt properly. So that's why. But that's life. So yeah.
We also been practicing with bats, because all around the compost pile there was a lot of bugs. No? So that was a little problem. So we built some, we call it bat hotels. So some boxes on some trees. So the bats would move in there, and at night they would fly around and eat all the mosquitoes and flies and all that. And what else? What are the animals we got lately? It's like we also have a lot of because in biodynamics, it's not just having animals to work, but it's bring animals to have biodiversity in all possible way. So in the water reservoir where we collect all the rainwater, we put a lot of ducks and swans to bring more different animals to the family. So the sparkling wines that you have today, the bubbles, these are the historic products of Gramona. For example, Tres Lustros, we launched it in 1951. So that wine has been in the market for over 70 years. And those wines, Imperial, Lustros, were designed by the grandfather of Rock, Josep Lluís. Then Jaume Gramona, his father, he started with the white wines, and he's the one that came up with Gessamí. I don't know if some of you have the white wine with the flowers.
Anybody?
Yeah, there's a bunch of those out there.
Okay, so the white wines were the generation of Jaume Gramona. Some with local varieties, some with international varieties, because Jaume Gramona, he went to school in Burgundy, and then when he came back, he wanted to experiment with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And now this generation Rock, he's also making his own line of wines. We didn't release them yet. We were supposed to do it this month, but it wasn't the right moment to launch new products to the market. But hopefully next year we will see some wines with rock. They will not be under Gramona. They will have a different brand because we want to separate.
Yeah.
They have a different concept than the bubbles. And we're also experimenting with high altitude vineyards because, you know, in Penedès, the altitude of our vineyards is around 300 meters, so it's not very high. And because of climate change, those altitudes are being challenged over the years. So we want to experiment with high altitude. So this year we got some vineyards up in the Pyrenees at 1,200 meters, Rock? What is the altitude up there?
It's about 1,200 meters. Yeah, 1,200. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
So at the moment we have a little bit of Muscat, Parellada, and Pinot Noir. When we bought the vineyards, that's what we got. But we might change that to find other varieties that adapt better to the region.
Yeah.
So all this to tell you that Gramona is a classic, you know, old school labels in the market for over 70 years. But at the same time, we keep exploring, trying new things, different techniques, different regions, different altitudes, because this in our spirit, we always are searching for new things. Gramona has always been very involved with research and education. Like now, Rock is teacher for the pruning school, but his father has been teacher at the University of Tarragona for like 25 years, something like that. So they're always very related to training and education. Oh, that's a look at there.
And
Dutch wines are cool too. We should all be excited to hopefully try them soon. I got to taste some of the ferments and things in barrel when I was there last time. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Another weird thing that Gramona does in an old school way that's really cool is they actually age some sparkling wine in large format, which I've never seen anybody else do ever. Like anywhere, not in Champagne, not in like anywhere else in France, not anywhere else in the Penedès, but like there's like Jeroboams in the cellar under cork, having gone through secondary ferment but not being disgorged yet. I've never seen that anywhere else in the world. It's the only place I've ever seen it.
What would be very scary to disgorge that.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
What do people normally do to make large format?
They just take a bunch of 750s and disgorge them and then fill up the big bottle and then close it up again.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you like a Nebuchadnezzar of champagne, it's just a whole bunch of 750s of champagne that were then, after disgorgement, poured into a Nebuchadnezzar and then closed. I mean, it might be impossible to disgorge a Nebuchadnezzar. I'm actually not sure how you would do it. Like, you need to find like a 10-foot tall guy. I don't know how that would be a thing. But even like a Jeroboam, I've never seen anywhere else. The biggest I've ever seen anywhere besides Gramona is a Magnum. I've seen like Magnums that were going to be disgorged and reclosed.
It makes me love Gramona even more.
The old Gramona cellar, when they built that new one that Rock was showing you, the old one in town is still where they do all the long-term aging. So if you go to look at the cellars there, it's just like floor after floor after floor after floor of, you know, like unlabeled bottles with like little chalk like signs telling you what they are, just down at floor after floor of them. Because as you can see from the wines we're drinking, I mean, the La Cuvée is just like the regular cava, and you know, you can get slightly newer stuff, but I mean, you can buy 5-year-old La Cuvée in Rhode Island, and it's like, oh, that's just what's around. Which is crazy that the entry like basic cava is that old. So you got to put a lot of space into aging stuff too, it's a really nice old cellar. And if you ever find yourself in Sensory, it's an important place to go check out.
Yeah, when I started working at Gramona in 2006, the longest aging we released was 10 years on the lease, which, you know, is a long time. But then they were like, okay, let's push it a little longer. So we launched Enoteca with 12 years. And then they were like, we can go farther. So we launched Enoteca with 15 years. And now we have a a few bottles of Enoteca that we release with 18 years, and we mark it on the bottle. Because this Charello grape has a really long life. So we keep pushing it, and it shows us that it changes, becomes more and more complex. And in the winery, we still have bottles all the way back to the 30s on lease. So, Rock, do you want to make sparkling wine as well sometime, or you wanna stay more focused on other things?
For the new project, I mean, for sooner or later, I will have to work for and do that and continue that sparkling wines quality for sure. But later, for the new project, I will do some ancestral method, some PetNat. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's the first wine that we're going to release from Malvasida Sitges PetNat.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it will be nice. Just 600 bottles for the moment. 600 bottles, but yeah, so we'll see. I think it's pretty fresh, acid, vertical, and aromatic sparkling wine from Malvasida Sitges, so it's amazing. I just like it. But yeah.
Is the Malvasia for that? Is it from vineyards in your part of the Penedès or down closer to the ocean?
It's still in the part of the central Penedès. It's not from Garraf from the coast.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, obviously the Malvasia came from Garraf from the coast. But we had some wine growers actually there planting it, and so it's interesting. They're young vines still, but they're nice. So.
Yeah, if any of you have had the Blanc de Blanc from Clos and Tiscus at the bar, that's our friend Manel, and that's from Garraf down closer to the water. So if you saw the map that Rock was showing earlier, you can kind of see like there's like a little mountain range right by the water, and then there's kind of this like, it's not really a valley, it's kind of like a low plateau. That's the sort of heart of the Penedès, which is where Gramona is. And so, and then you go up again, farther inland, up into the mountains again, and then that's kind of like the higher elevation mountains of that part of the Penedès right on the end. And you go up there and you see a lot of like Periata planted up on like these like, 600 meter elevation vineyards. It's like, so like there's two rows of mountains.
Yeah. So and Malvasia, I think for doing easy, not long aging sparkling wine as an ancestral method, for me it's amazing. So you can do really great things with Malvasia. And then so maybe you will see some Grenache Noir, some Grenache White from high altitude vines from Penedès, and then some Charello, some Macabeo as a still wine. So that's kind of the new project that we are planning. So yeah.
Cool. Are you working with direct press or with skin fermentation for the Charello and the Macabeo for the still whites?
So the Charello, Macabeo, and Grenache White, I'm doing some skin contact for 8 hours only, just to, especially for the Charello, just give a push on the kind of an aromatic part of Charello, just because usually it's pretty shy, not really explosive.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it can be kind
and Grenache White, I tried last year, and I think this year we tried with one vineyard, yes, and with another one not, just because one is really old. It's from 1939. So I think that one doesn't really need it, just because that concentration is amazing. And the young one, yes. So yeah, and the Macabeo, yes. So it's a vineyard from the 50s, but anyway, just make some skin contact. But then I will do I will make a orange wine from Charello Vermell, hopefully, because I just ordered the amphora this year. But I don't know if I will get it at the right time before harvest. So I will see.
And Rock, is most of this fruit just coming from other Gramona vineyards that just have like odds and ends of other things planted, or you are getting fruit from other growers, or what's the fruit sourcing?
So the big thing is obviously to try to use all the vines from vineyards from Gramona.
Yep.
But I think I'm actually working with some wine growers, not especially the wine growers from Alianzas per la Terra, different wine growers. And the hardest work that I'm doing is to actually to walk around and see all these vines in Penedès and work with an autochthon grapes and local grapes. So that's why I'm working Grenache White and maybe some Sumoll or maybe some Charol Vermell, just because I want to look for all vines and do something with them. So minimum has to be organic for me, even if it's really old vine and pretty beautiful wine. If it's not at least an organic, I will not buy it. But yeah, that's the thing. It's at least has to be organic. But I think we have to still express how we actually Penedès can be for doing still wine, just because we just started doing sparkling wines recently in the beginning of the 80s, but the 80s, the 1850s, we started doing sparkling wine in the region. But I think we can do such a really great still wines in Penedès. That's why I'm just looking for old wines. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've heard that story of Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah, he was telling us that last time he was visiting. So
the other story,
like, it's going to be gone.
That's less romantic is that because you can also just eat it. It's like a big grape that people just had vines around just to eat grapes. And it had been a wine grape, and then it was mostly just like an eating grape. Well, it had been a wine grape and an eating grape, and that was mostly eating grape. And then people were like, we could probably make wine out of this again, right? That's the less romantic story.
Yeah, that's true.
It tastes good. I mean, it's delicious. Like, it's a big, fat, plump, juicy grape. I mean, it's really tasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say it picks up such great like golden fruit, like as it ages, as it picks up leaves, like it just picks up such a great kind of texture to it. You can see where the fruit. I've never gotten to have it just raw, but like you can see where it's like this definitely has like its own structure before it turns into wine. So because it's so many kind of complex elements to it while still staying really like fruity and pretty and
yeah, it's grapey. It's really grapey.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you eat Xarel·lo and like it doesn't really taste like very much in the vineyard. Like the skin is kind of thick and like a little like waxy, and it kind of overwhelms the juice a little bit, like the structure of the skin. Malvasia is like you have like a little like it's a little piece of fruit like pops in your mouth. There's all this like juice and it's like sweet and juicy. It's like a very different grape like texturally, like when you see it in the vineyard. Yeah, it's like it's good to eat, and Xarel·lo is great for making wine, and you can eat it, but it's not the best for eating.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And Malvasia, the grape is like pretty long. It's like
the cluster is huge. Sumal is like that too, though. Sumal has those like super comically long clusters where it's like this long sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. And like
and Xarel·lo is like poop.
Yeah, Xarel·lo's a tight little thing. Yeah. Or like little Macabeo hand grenades.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have some questions from Adam. The first vineyard actually we started doing sparkling wine. It's called La Plana. So La Plana, it's a 4 hectares vineyard that we have it from Xarel·lo Macabeu, and this is actually still the vineyard that we're doing. Or Tres Lustres Cella Vall Enoteca sparkling wine. So the long aging sparkling wine just came from a single vineyard that actually has that 25% Macabeu and 75% Xarel·lo blend in the same vineyard. So that's one of the oldest vineyards. Is actually the oldest vineyards that Josep Batlle, that first generation, was cultivating at the beginning, and we were selling it to France or to Cuba. So that's actually the origin of that vineyard. And then the meaning of Corpinat. Corpinat, it's what do you think about the name of Corpinat? Let's talk honestly.
There's so many like different people trying to figure out what to do with the stupidity of the Cava DO and have their own different solutions to it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Because the thing that's kind of funny about it is I think that in the Penedès, it's really important to figure out how to understand the like collective project of responding to the stupidity of the Cava DO and doing something together as like people in the Penedès who care about making sparkling wine that matters. But I think like as consumers of that wine in the US, I don't care what you put on the label. It doesn't matter. I just know that it's like a Gramona wine, or like, you know, like it's like Julia Burnet. Like it's like I just know like who made the wine. Oh, it's Ilio Parch, right? It's like I'm like, okay, cool. Like I don't care what they put on it. I care that it's like made by those people, and then it's so I think there's like two different conversations going on. One of which is like, how do we do this thing together in this place so that we can figure out how to like have a community that's moving this project forward, versus like the marketing aspect of it. And I think in the US, at the end of like at the tier of the market that's like interested in drinking serious, exciting, artisanal stuff, it's much more important to have a relationship to the specific human beings who are behind the project than to like the particular like governmental or like corporate organizational structure under which it like has a label on top of it. And I think like what you were saying, Rock, about like Demeter certification, it's like fine, you can have the cert on it, but I'd much rather just have like gone out to see the vineyard or have a friend who's seen the vineyard and be like, oh yeah, that's really good farming. That's like much more important to me.
Yeah. But we're also at the beginning of everything. So it's like, you know, Cava obviously for the layperson, you know, means something to them. So hopefully eventually this will mean something to, you know, in like 15, 20 years time, this will mean something when somebody sees it who is a layperson and isn't, you know, already nerding out, sitting on Zoom conversations with winemakers on like 4 o'clock on a Friday.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, the thing is that I mean, is what you say. The concept is more important than just the name, no? But the name of Corpinat in English, it doesn't really sound bad, but in Spanish it's just like what's the meaning of that, no? But Corpinat actually means something. It's cor in Catalan means heart. Pinae means Penedès in Latin. Pinae just because the Romans just call it Penedès Pinae just because it's a land between two stones. Okay, and that's kind of the name of in Latin. Innat means born. So let's say it's born in the center of the Penedès. Kind of a translation of the name of Corpinat. So that's more or less the name of the concept of the name. So it sounds more beautiful when you explain it, I think.
Yeah. Rock, do you remember how many hectares are in Cava?
Yeah, actually, 2 years ago we're the same as Champagne area, so it's about 34,000, and now there are actually 37,000 hectares in Cava.
Okay, so 37,000 hectares, there are only over 200 producers of Cava.
Yeah.
And you know why? Because Cava is sold for it's very entry level, and they sell it for very cheap price.
Yeah.
So I think if some of these growers start making quality sparkling wine, aiming to become Corpinat, that will push some of these growers to make the step, because nowadays the average price is 40 cents per kilo. That's very hard to make a living on that.
Yeah.
And especially this year, a lot of people is not going to be able to sell their fruit. But if they make the effort to make quality sparkling wine to become Corpinat that has more value, hopefully that will bring new young producers to make quality sparkling wine.
Yeah, and I think part of that dynamic that's really important in a lot of regions, but certainly in the Penedès in quite a very real way, is just creating some kind of incentive for growers to bother to be good farmers. Because if you're going to get 40 cents a kilo for Xarel·lo, no matter how you farmed it and how much you grow per hectare, you're just going to farm it conventionally because it's less work, and you get higher yields unless it gets really bad and you get lower yields, but you usually get higher yields. and the quality of the fruit doesn't matter. So you just want to have as much as you can. So you want to give people an incentive, some kind of system for, well, I grow grapes for a living, and I have to have an alternative to just growing as many grapes as possible that, make sure that I can have an economic life. And I think there's a lot of people wrestling with that question, I think, because there's like dealing with like, okay, well, how do we move in a direction that people who grow grapes, who aren't necessarily the vignerons, who aren't necessarily making their own wine, can have an incentive to be good farmers and to work with people who are going to make interesting wine out of their grapes and grow interesting grapes. And I think a lot of places in the world are grappling with that and sort of how to incentivize people to move away from just like squeeze as many grapes as you can out of the land,
Yeah, we need more producers because it's not a lot, and majority of it is production is 3 brands only.
Yeah, well, I mean, what
Wineries.
percentage of it is like Frégenet? I mean, like, what percentage of Cava is that? Like 20?
Of Frégenet?
No, more.
Like all of Cava in all of Spain, what percentage is Frégenet? Just that particular, not all the wine the company produces, just the one label.
It's more than 50%.
50%?
Yeah,
More.
yeah. There is about 250 million bottles, and Frégenet is making over 100 million of that, only Frégenet.
That's so insane. Like what I was trying to describe before when I was saying like how different this farming is. You drive through the sort of heart of the Penedès, like between Vilafranca and Santorini, and then out towards like Font-Ruby, where like, where Gramona is, and then where like where other people you guys have drunk, like Soriol is, and Iliopart and Recaredo, all these places. It's like most of the vineyards are just owned by Frégenet, and they have the signs out front and the stupid like weird, just like they have like a vertical, like old vertical basket press like in front of the vineyard, and it's like no one there has ever worked with a vertical basket press or has any idea what that was actually for. It's like there for decoration. Or there's like an amphora outside the vineyard, but it's like everything there is made in giant stainless steel tanks that are outside because they're too big to fit in a building.
Ew.
Yeah, well, they buy a lot of base wine, a lot.
Yeah. Oh, tons of
And
it.
majority. But in Corpinat, one of the rules that is mandatory is that 100% of the wine must be produced in the winery.
Yeah.
To prevent that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible to buy fruit to support, the local growers, but the wine must be made in the property.
Right. And that's an important distinction for sure.
On a related note, I heard that Sutter Home is having virtual wine tastings. So we might miss one of the Fortnight nights.
Oh yeah.
Is that home?
Delicious nectar of the gods.
Repeat that, Aaron. What do you
Record it.
I saw that it was like Sutter Home or Kendall Jackson was
Oh my
having
God.
virtual tasting.
Kendall Jackson is for sure doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
And John Bon Jovi.
And John Bon Jovi. I saw that.
Yes. My question there would be, how quickly can they kick us out if we constantly just bomb their chat?
Ooh, we should.
They can mute everybody immediately, right?
Yeah.
So
Again, absurd. Wisconsin, in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, USA. But yeah, Trinidad, immigrants. We're awesome.
So I had a question about the wine we're drinking. So right now we have open the 2013 Imperial and the 2015 La Cuvée. They're both really, really nice. I guess, could you talk about maybe some of the differences that went into making them? Like what made the Imperial what you wanted the Imperial to be?
Yep. So let's say the Cuvée has that 70% Xarel·lo, 30% Macabeu blend, and then the Imperial has that 60% almost Xarel·lo, then Macabeu, and then Chardonnay, a bit of Chardonnay. The thing is, here we actually split in the vineyard. So Imperial and La Cuvée came from different vineyards from or wine growers. The best vineyards and the ones from actually can hold longer. The aging goes from Imperial, and the ones maybe pretty young but that actually can hold and has a good quality goes from La Cuvée. So as I always say, La Cuvée for me for being a basic sparkling wine, it's it's pretty amazing. I don't know if yours actually is Brut or Brut Nature. Just let me check it if you have it, if you can. But usually the Cuvée, we have both.
We have Brut.
Okay.
Yeah, in the US it's Brut.
Okay, sorry.
It's in London it's Natur, but
Okay.
in the US it's Brut.
You should send us some of both.
Okay. That would be very confusing.
And then the difference between the
We bought the entire stock of Rhode Island just for this particular set of wine distribution. Every bottle of Gramona in Rhode Island Fortnight, like on Tuesday, so we could pack up all these boxes for
We
everyone.
are grateful. It is amazing.
Thank you.
My 2021 plans are going to start around Gramona. How can we get there? And, I don't know. I got really excited when you said that there were 12 different wines. And I'm like, well, we only have 4. That means there's 8 more we're not drinking.
I know. It's because when we have to supply a country like the US, I only can bring things that I can have cases to be able to supply in everywhere. No, so there are some wines that have very small production that I can't even think of bringing.
Yeah,
And some
just the one case for the US, you can just send to Rhode Island. It's fine, no problem.
Okay.
Take care of it.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
It's like sort of a joke, but also the fact that the Rhode Island market is so tiny, but is so close to like
Boston
both New
and
York
New
and
York.
Boston, where a lot of stuff actually comes into. A lot of importers I work with who import wine into those places, sometimes they're like, shit, I only have like 1 case of this or 1 case of this left or whatever. And they're like, we'll just send it to Rhode Island because if I keep it in New York, we're going to fight over, oh, I only got 2 bottles. Why did they get 2 bottles? I should have got 4 bottles and they should have got no bottle. Or why did I get any bottles? And it's like, we can just send it to Rhode Island and no one will yell at us.
Mm.
And Rhode Island, like nobody wants it. There's like 2 accounts that want anything. So it doesn't matter. There's no fighting here about this stuff.
Except all of us.
I discovered
but
Rhode
you
Island
don't have wine, so
only
it's
like
fine.
3 years ago. And since then, I make sure I go every year because I love to go to Providence and then drive to Newport and see all these areas that at the end, we have a lot of similarities with our region because you're very close to the water. So you eat a lot of fish, you like to be on the water. It's very touristic as well. So I love it there.
Yeah,
So
and
it
there's
was
also the
very nice
weird thing
discovery.
too. I think what's funny about Rhode Island too is when a lot of winemakers come from Europe, I think people like get this kind of sense of, oh yeah, this is kind of familiar. And I think part of it too is that people in Rhode Island don't believe in traveling that far. There's more of that like sensibility, which is like, yeah, like Rock said, like, oh yeah, like it's 13 minutes from San Sardini to Barcelona. And there's a lot of people who go back and forth all the time. But there are plenty of people who live in the Penedès and go to Barcelona like once every 2 years.
Yeah.
Like that's really
Yes,
far
yeah.
away. That's like very Rhode Island. You're like, oh, wait, you want me to go 15 minutes away? That's a long trip.
That's true.
A lot of us are adopted Rhode Islanders, and we're here, and we love it here because of the sensibility. For me, I love the abstinence of Rhode Islanders. I love the priority on discretionary time over discretionary income. Power, like a lot of the rest of the East Coast. Like, I'm here because I truly want to be. But yeah, there's
Yeah, it's cheap enough you can live in the Northeast too. That's
I
the
just
other
have to say about being a native Rhode Islander, I lived most of my adult life in Europe, and I always said
Oh.
the only way I would ever come back to Rhode Island is in a casket. So you'll all get invitations to my funeral
Aw,
because I'm here.
I don't know.
All right.
I feel very fortunate. I mean, despite the current circumstances, I feel very fortunate to live in Rhode Island and to live in Providence in particular at this particular point in time. Days to be.
Yeah, we got to keep it that way.
Because of
Keep moving.
because of people like, you know, the owners of Fortnight, like it is
We're doing
now.
the most work. It's so bad.
Yeah.
I think we should let Anna and Rock go because it's almost midnight in Spain.
Thank you for talking to us.
Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody.
Yeah, thanks
Thank you so much, Mike, for giving us this
Thank you.
opportunity.
So
Very
good to
nice
see
meeting you all. See you in Barcelona.
Yeah,
Yes.
one day. Hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you
very
This
much.
is the highlight of the pandemic.
Nice to see you, Adam.
Good to see you guys. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so
And a
much.
delicious wine, too. Thank you.
So good. So good.
Bye.
Yeah,
Really
Everyone.
good.
Send me Trace Lustros.